Yeah.
I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won.
Yeah.
I hope my team they won.
Yeah. Man.
I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won.
Yeah.
I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Wash and Charles Bishop. And today, AD Drew is bringing you a Sunday edition of letting you know what happened on Saturday. Charles, anybody on the ledge?
Yeah, Doc. I mean, it is a beautiful Sunday morning. I mean, it is brunch weather outside, and somewhere, somebody is going to be sitting over bottomless mimosas and upset about that quarterback play. It's just going to be, it is what it is.
And this weekend, I think a lot of them happen to be at the D2 level. Some of them even coming in from the NIA level. Yeah, it wasn't a great weekend for the D2 HBCU. Particularly, we thought there may be a couple of upsets. Essentially, there was one close game. Winston-Salem State and A&T went to overtime.
Wow.
Many of the Rams will say they let the Aggies off the hook. I'm going to be interested to see how many Aggies are excited about that game. Understand the victory. Then we'll go up to Virginia, and that ended up being a spread, but you had Virginia Union up 2 scores in the third quarter, and Hampton responded with 3 straight touchdowns and pulled away. Pretty much everybody else were just took out a beating club and molly-whooped whoever they were. Even in the relatively close scores in terms of Norfolk State and certainly Alabama State, those scores were closer than the game were. Penalties and things of that nature. But shout out to the D2 that had 8 games. They went 8-0. The D2s went 0-8 in the matchups against SVS. So we'll get a chance to maybe discuss your thoughts in terms of what does that mean and why that. But with that being said, let me give the proper welcome on this Sunday morning. Welcome to episode 543 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that is covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports, institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Wash and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios in Center Signal Live at KCOA's 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas, Southern University in Houston, Texas. Mike Watson, give me your thoughts. I'm going to take you back to the game that the group of Prairie View tailgaters in our editions, the male collective, I will say, were texting in regards to the Prairie View at Northwestern State. Wow.
Yeah, I had about 2 chat groups. I had the chat group that we were on with the male contingent, and then I had a separate chat group with the female contingent. It's very different conversation. You got to understand. So
now that's fascinating. Hey, Charles,
how did you get in the female chat group? That's what I want to know.
Yes. This is female family members. I'm sorry. Female family members that went to PG.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Charles, I just found your dissertation topic.
It was a very, very different discussion.
I need to do this focus group here.
Go ahead, Mike. We'll get into details of it, but essentially, the last play, or last 2 plays, maybe.
last two plays, I'll say that for the detail. There were a lot of bonehead plays, I'll say. And you're having to talk, despite it's a win, you backed a few PV people off the ledge, only about a 2 steps. Only about 2 steps. All right, I'm going to take 2 steps back. That's basically what they're saying. If you look at the bonehead plays made, and I'm going I've miscalculated calls. Oh my goodness. And I got the female contingent saying, why he ain't doing this? Why he ain't doing, I don't know. I really can't explain that. So we'll get into the details. But just, to sum it up, the Prairie View contingency is about 2 steps back off the ledge. After that TSU loss, it was a gang of them right on that ledge. They taking 2 steps back. There's still some questions to be answered. It is what it is.
So Prairie View wins on the goal line stance on time down because the receiver caught the ball at the at the 1 yard line.
At the 1.
They stop and get a penalty, so it's at the half line for the face mask during the play for the on-time down. Then they look like they have the guy stopped squarely in the back, and the coach calls a timeout. So the play doesn't play. They come back, play it again. This one is closer, but as the guys are walking up, you're praying if you're Prairie View not to hold up the hand sign because it's close as hell. And they they call it. Everybody celebrating. Then they be like, "Hey, we got to review it." And you like, review it on the road. They finna review this. Back out. Call stand on the field. Everybody's like,
I've never seen a team have a team down by maybe 14 points and just take your foot off the pedal with bonehead plays.
They were literally up 2 scores, dominating the game, getting their foot, and they get a pump that would have put them at the 50, maybe 40 at the worst. Guy looks over his head, not throwing it back, tries to do a Willie.
Tries to do a 180 and catch a ball he doesn't have sight on. Touches the ball. The ball touches his hand, takes 1 bounce, and the first defender down there grabs the ball and runs it in for a touchdown.
Mike, let me back you up 2 steps off the ledge there. I hear your boy.
And they call it a touchdown upon review. They got it right and said you can't advance enough. But
said you
can't. They stopped them according to the defense and forcing them field goal.
To the defensive credit, stop. But you're thinking this is football 1-on-1. If you can't get it, let the ball bounce.
Yeah, you could do anything except what he did. 80 Drew, where are you this weekend?
As you know, I am a D2 person. I'm an SIAC man.
And
4 and 5.
5 against the CIAA.
5. The one that the SIC thought they were gonna get.
No,
it did not happen. As there were 8 seconds remaining on the clock when Shaw overtook Albany State. That's number 1. Number 2, speaking of the CIAA, Johnson C. Smith is in first place in the SIAC, having gone 2-0 against the SIAC through 2 weeks. Number 3, through 2-ish weeks, if the ish is week 0, I am questioning some coaching decisions, and this is across both levels in FCS Division II, on some of our coaching calls, going for 2s, going for it on 4th downs, different things that not only every fan in the stands is like, that's not the move to do. Every member media in press row that I've been on, we've seen it going on, even back to the BXWAC challenge, where we have questioned some of the coaching decisions by the brethren in the coaching fraternity. And while we all love aggressive play, and when you get it right, you are the hero. You always want to be the GOAT of whatever you do. But I do not think that this is the GOAT that everybody was talking about that you want to be with some of these coaching calls. I'm going to leave it right there.
Great breakdown. And then there were some of them that left you scratching your head. I'll put it that way, for example. But let me get into the update scores here. Before I do that, today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting, educational consulting, as well as data analytics. Let's start with the mid-major division on the games that were played today. I played yesterday or on Thursday. Starting with those receiving votes, so we'll have essentially the top 10 scores. Florida Memorial Lions defeat the Edward Water Tigers 31-72. They improved to 1-0. The Langston Lions lost to Central Oklahoma Broncos 73-0. They fall to 0-1. That was a shock. Not that they lost, but that bad. The Fayetteville State Broncos defeated the UNC Pembroke Braves. Big time win here, 35-31. Final in that, so they improved to 1-0. Getting in the top 7, you heard a little bit about this. Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls defeat Morehouse Maroon Tigers 37-13. They improved to 2-0. Number 6, the Shaw Bears defeat Albany State Golden Rams 43-40. They improved to 2-0. And number 5, Winston-Salem State Rams lost to North Carolina A&T State Aggies 27-20. They're 1-1 in terms of that matchup. Number 4, Edward Water Tigers lose to Florida Memorial Lions 31-22. They fall to 1-1. Number 3, the Clark Atlanta Panthers defeat the Allen Yellow Jackets 26-22. They improved to 2-0. A 3-minute drive was extremely impressive by David Wright to get that done. At number 2, and there goes the touchdown play to end the game, essentially to take the lead. Went the entire length of the field, ran the 2-minute drill, and knocked off essentially 3 minutes of the clock. Perfectly done after Allen, to their credit, came from 2 scores down, essentially to take the lead in that game. Number 2, Virginia State Trojans lose to Norfolk State Spartans 28-23. Back and forth, but Norfolk State took control, it looked like, in the second half. But Virginia State, to their credit, fought back, but they fall in that matchup 1-1. Number 1, Virginia Union Panthers lost to Hampton Pirates 33-21 after taking a 21-6 lead in that game in the third quarter. Could not hold on in the second half. So Virginia Union Panthers dropped to 1-1. Let's get into the top 10, including those receiving votes in the major division. Howard Bison defeat Mercyhurst Lakers 32-21 on a 32-31, I should say. They improved to 1-1. They went down, Charles, in terms of that matchup. After controlling the lead, they let Mercyhurst come back. Mercyhurst scores a touchdown, but on the point after, it's blocked. Gallup, the All-American, runs it back for a 2-point conversion that puts them maybe in a miracle position to get a field goal. Well, guess what? They did just that, and they win 32-31 after kicking the winning field goal. Number 6, Delaware State Hornets Jackson State Tigers defeated Lane Dragons, and they beat up on them like you would see a FCS Division 1 major division over Division 2. It was never close, literally, before they clicked it off. 58-7. They improved to 1-1 on the season. Speaking of South Carolina State Bulldogs, they defeat the Citadel 23-20. Game performance there went back and forth, but they did what was necessary to take down their Bulldog cousins, Citadel, or enemies, whichever one that you want, because they're in the same state. 23-20, improved to 1-1. At number 7, Alabama State Hornets defeated the Miles Golden Bears 24-3 behind excellent play of freshmen that come in there that look like they've been playing football for a very long time. They were very good. Credit to their defense, but the penalties kept that game closer. The last drive before the half, in fact, they scored twice, or at least they thought so. Both times they were taken off the board. Finally, they got it in there and they let it stand. I was like, wow. Number 6, Delaware State Hornets did not play. And number 5, Texas Southern Tigers, after a big victory over Prairie View, go across the street to Rice Isles, and they treat them not so nice. 69.
Get a woodshed.
Woodshed.
Number 4, Tennessee Tigers. They see a woodshed themselves as they go to North Dakota and understand what it means to play in the top programs in FCS. 52-3. Number 3, Morgan State Bears lost to cross-town competitors. Some would say rivals, Towson Tigers, 14-9. Offense disappeared again, just 3 field goals in that matchup. Actually, they scored a touchdown and 1 field goal point after was no good. FAMU Rattlers lost to Miami Hurricanes, 56-9. I thought that could get a little uglier than that, even though that was pretty ugly, 56-9.
That was ugly as hell.
Right, 2-1, they fall. North Carolina Central probably surprised a lot of people at home. They lose to Elon Phoenix 41-9, and I'm not sure if it was that close. They're still looking for to keep the Phoenix out the end zone the way they were playing that game. They dominated. They fall to 1-1 in terms of that matchup. Let's take our first break. We'll come back on the other side. We'll get into a little more conversation on some of these matchups, what took place, more details, particularly from the view of these sports analysts here. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
At AutoMasters LLC, our mission is to serve our community by providing quality automobiles at affordable prices. All of our vehicles are inspected and certified to offer you the confidence in knowing you have a quality vehicle. Our goal is to provide you with a seamless process and positive experience for your automobile purchase. Financing recommendations and specific vehicle inquiries are available at your request. You can find us at www.automasters06.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, please feel free to contact Terrence Miles at 601-927-7794. And oh yeah, tell him Sonia sent you.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
To get a play here that, again, either gets out of bounds or you're running your kicker out there next. So 5 wide for Peters. He's gonna throw. Flushed out the pocket, gets some pressure, still has plenty of time. Doesn't see a receiver open late, under duress, still on his feet, throws it, and it is caught for the touchdown. To get a play here that.
Dr. Cavill's inside the HBCU Sports Labs. We bring it back. We'll get you a couple of these highlights throughout the show. You saw that in the opening segment right there.
That was our colleague Jamie Walker on the call.
Exactly. Great job by Jamie getting it done. Shout out to Charles doing some calls as well this past Thursday. That's why he was on assignment. Mike was always on assignment. I'm not sure what calls he's making, but we're going to say that for another session. But he's making calls too. My fault. Sorry, Mike. I won't know. Let's get in a little bit more of the discussion before we break some of these things down in this segment. I opened it up and talked about the fact that the FCS D1 HBCUs went 8-0 against the HBCU NCAA Division II matchups. There were 5 in the SWAC. There were 1 in the MEAC and then 2 for the independents. And they pretty much handled these games. So I want to get your general thoughts on that, Mike and Charles. And then I have a question for you, Drew, in terms of your thoughts, as you mentioned, that the CIAA dominating the SIAC in terms of wins, being 5-0. First for you and Charles, starting with you, Charles. What are your thoughts in terms of what you saw of the FCS going 8-0 in terms of these matchups? What does that mean?
I mean, it was an impressive weekend for the FCS teams going against the Division II teams. The one that really kind of surprised me because you're looking at Alabama State basically going with their third string starter against Miles, and Alabama State was able to take it to Miles. I don't think I saw the score being as lopsided as it was, and Alabama State went back to sort of a proven formula, running the football and defense, and they were able to turn Miles over a couple times there. But that was the score that really jumped out for me.
Good one. I agree. I had a chance to watch that game, and again, the score that was pretty impressive doesn't really indicative of the way Alabama State physically dominated Miles, and I certainly, like you, did not think that was the case. One thing that you're starting to see in a lot of these games is the number of penalties that can cost you later in the season. Mike, what were your thoughts in terms of just going 8-0? It's been a while since we've seen that in terms of FCS Division II, and we had 2 or 3. Some people even had 4 games that they were saying keep your eyes on. And for the most part, other than maybe Winston-Salem State, North Carolina A&T, they weren't even close.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's that part. I'm not surprised, okay, maybe this is that one year that, we go 8-0. We talked about this last week. There were about 3 or 4 games. I think I had 3. Some of our colleagues had 4 that you could have, dare I say, maybe upsets. I guess what stands out to me is the magnitude. I mean, outside of maybe Tuskegee and Grambling, they were decisive victories, which, and even in some cases where, you look at Kentucky State, you look at Miles only put up 3 points. The magnitude of the defeats, I did kind of just a rough statistical analysis. It was on average 3 to 4 touchdown victory margin in those games. So while I'm not surprised that this is just one of those years, I was surprised at the magnitude of the losses. That stands out the most to me.
Go ahead, George. You want to jump back in?
Yeah, I will say I think Jackson State, they exercised the demons of Kentucky State a few years ago because they needed that.
Yeah. Point well taken. I'm glad you put that in there. Yeah, these were so dominating. I was like following the scores, obviously watching Alabama State Prairie View. They were putting up goose eggs, and they scored, field goal for Miles, touchdown for Lane, a touchdown in terms of Alabama A&M for Kentucky State. But they were goose eggs in a lot of these opponents. Obviously, we're talking about D2, but you throw in Arkansas Baptist. We know the concerns of their football program, but Arkansas Pine Bluff did what they needed to do, 73-0. So at least, to me, make some conversation for the Southern Heritage Classic next week. That'll be our last segment where we'll break down and see what's your interest this week. Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to go to you, Drew. I don't want to ask you this question in terms of CIAA and SIAC. For years, SIAC was known as the football conference, CIAA the basketball conference. Over the last decade, that scene has shifted to CIAA, at least in terms of some of the top teams as you would vote in your polls, going deeper into the playoffs. But it's all culminated this year thus far in these non-conference games where you pointed out last week it was 4-0, this week added. So they have gone 5-0. When I say they, the CIAA has gone 5-0 against the SIC. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna take that one step further. You talk about CIAA being the football conference, SIAC being the basketball conference. I think it's been a complete 180 over the last decade plus, where SIAC is probably playing better basketball than the CIAA as of recent, and the CIAA playing better football than the SIAC in the last 10 to 15 years. This is what I look at, Dr. Cavil. Okay, SIAC went 0-7 in non-conference matchups yesterday. There was one conference matchup yesterday, so we're taking a non-conference matchup. Let's be real. We wasn't really counting those 5 against those SWAC schools, So we could take that 0-5.
Yep.
We assumed that we would get the one when we were playing down. i.e., Edward Waters playing against a good Florida Memorial team. But we're still supposed to get that one. And then there was one cross Division II matchup that the SIAC also laid the goose egg in. When I look at the CIAA, when you take it out all the games where they're playing up, CIAA is 3-3 against non-SIAC competition on the D2 level, 5-0 against the SIAC on the D2 level. SIAC, not only if this trend continues, because you're pretty much going to be in the conference play now. So these first 2 weeks are really going to be a determining factor, week 10, week 11, when it comes to poll rankings, regional rankings, and playoff berths. And a lot of people don't know there is no such thing as an automatic qualifier at the Division II level. It is called a preferred qualifier. You become a preferred qualifier if you win your conference, i.e. SIAC championship, and finish within the top 9. You have to beat both. It's not an either or. It has to be both if you're not ranked in the top 7. Good. This does not look good for the SIAC come that time. Although it's early, I'm just putting it out there for discussion, fellas.
No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right in terms of what you did there. I'm gonna ask all 3 of you this, and then we'll go into our second break. We'll come back on the other side and let you talk about some matchups that we feature, since we were breaking down from a framework some of these key matchups from there. This time, let's go in terms of FCS. You just talked about the SIAC and CIAA in their various ways of playing non-conference games, and even those against historically white colleges I like to talk about. The FCS, MEAC SWAC, in terms of their FCS historically white college matchups, went 3-0. That was 1-0 in terms of the SWAC. In terms of their matchup against the SIC, while the MEAC was 1-2. North Carolina Central lost the Elon in terms of that matchup. You had Howard beating Mercyhurst that just moved up. Talked about the excitement at the end of that game. They won by a field goal. You had South Carolina State beating the Citadel in terms of what took place there. Independence, you had Tennessee State lose to North Dakota State. Understand what that looks like, but the measure probably will concern some folks. So what are your thoughts in terms of how these conferences are handling themselves in terms of non-conference play against FCS, historically white college foes, starting with you, Mike?
To me, if you look at it from year to year, and you don't start with just this year, let's go back 2, 3, 4 years. We've talked about these matchups, and we've asked the question, what is the playing field level on both sides? And if you look at it going back, I'd even say 5 years. Some of the wins, particularly with the MEAC against FCS opponents, I dare say that's at 50, 60%. I would even say in some years maybe greater. So then to me, that begs the question, what does that mean in terms of talent? Our talent versus or the talent at HBCUs versus at FCSs. Is there a difference in talent? And to me, this says the glaring answer is no. We always talk about the money games, but I'm talking about these types of games where you have competition. Citadel. You talk about Mercyhurst. You talk about these types of games, and I think they're good for the health of the HBCU. I think they show that if you look at talent for talent, position for position, coach for coach, that there's no difference. So I think it's good to continue this, but I think that to me, the point that stands out, and it may not be the X's and O's, but I think it equalizes or validates that there is talent, and even more so on really, the HBCU teams, particularly in the SWAC and the MEAC. So to me, I look at it from a talent basis. That's a different perspective. But I look at it on a 5-year plane, and I'd be interested in the statistic on how we have fared over the last 5 years in these matchups. and I was trying to scroll and look at the, and we're at least eyeball level, at least 55% those matchups. We're kind of, either ahead or very competitive or exciting games. So
good stuff. And let me go to you, AD Drew. Your thoughts on that and give you an update. The MEAC was 2-2. You obviously had the Morgan State lost. Gave you in the top 7 in terms of that. So they were 2-2. The SWAC was 1-2. You have the loss Bethune-Cookman, Mercy at home where they got dominated 31-2. Yeah, the relatively close game. Lamar defeated Mississippi Valley. It was 21-14 late in that game where Lamar scored the clinching touchdown late to win 28-14. So the SWAC was 1-2, obviously 0-1 in terms of Tennessee State losing to North Dakota State. So you can see certainly a gap in terms of the top 10 FCS matchups in terms of what that looks like as thought process there. Jimmy mentioned that, so give him a shout out in terms of giving that data. AD Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of these FCS non-conference matchups, HBCUs versus historically white college universities?
Excuse me. How does each team build its non-conference schedule? That's what I look at. And I'm going to take the SWAC and I'm going to take the MEAC. If you're in the SWAC and you play a FBS opponent and a Division II opponent in your non-conference, along with your SWAC schedule, you've only got one game left out there in the traditional 11-game season. What are the goals of the athletic director, the coach, the CFO, and the president? Because if you're trying to make money and trying to use those money games to balance other things out, when you're playing the FBS or 2 FBSs on your non-conference schedule, you're not building the schedule for, say, long-term postseason success. For you in the SWAC, it's Celebration Bowl or bust when it comes to it. Right. Versus if you're in the MEAC, because you have in a traditional season, you have 6 non-conference matchups. You can afford to play a FBS, a Division II, because you still have 4 other FCS games that you can play. So if you do not make it to the Celebration Bowl, you have the fallback of having an opportunity to build your resume to make it to the FCS playoffs. So the difference is how each conference builds its schedule, and you have to keep that in mind when you are doing this evaluation of how we're looking in the non-conference with these numbers. Just wanted to throw that out there, Dr. Cavil.
I like that. Appreciate that. Charles, just your thoughts on that, but I'm going to add this. Prairie View going back to 2021 has 3 of the FCS wins in terms of a program playing it. Now, they play them pretty much every year. They haven't played down in terms of D2. Some of that is because of regionality or NAIA, which they have a chance to play, whether that's Langston or Wiley in terms of their football, even maybe Arkansas Baptist. But they have 3 wins in about 6 matchups over that period of time. Wins over Lamar, Houston Baptist, and this win just yesterday over Northwestern State. What are your thoughts overall?
I think there's, and to Jimmy's point, there is a big difference between your top tier FCS programs when you take a look at SWAC trying to match up against them. But there's, to me, I think a little more balance, if you will, when you start talking about those mid to, I guess, bottom tier FCS teams. And I think, especially when you start taking a look at the regionality of certain conferences to the SWAC, to me, they match up pretty evenly. And sometimes it's just on a game-by-game type basis. So it's sort of a mixed bag. I think there are years where you will see a stronger Prairie View team match up very well with Houston Baptist, and, it's a very even contest. If you have a year where you breaking in a new quarterback or a young quarterback or whatever the case might be, you got a much better passer or a much better, more experienced squad, and we've seen that with HBU in regards to Prairie View. And that matchup, it becomes, a bit of a different look. So it kind of depends on the matchup, and kind of the same thing when I take a look at lower tier FBS programs matching up against FCS schools. Sometimes the physicality isn't a big difference. I was frankly a little bit surprised yesterday with Rice's physicality against Texas Southern. It wasn't close. But you kind of, the way I took a look at Jackson State, Louisiana Monroe, they were much closer in terms of physicality and things of that nature, and was able to match with Louisiana Monroe's depth. So, it's sort of a mixed bag to me. Sometimes it just kind of depends on the matchup.
Good stuff. Good breakdown in terms of what that looks like. Obviously, we have Alcorn with the McNeese matchup, Texas Southern, Lamar, some ones to kind of keep your eyes that jump out the schedule over the next couple of weeks. With that being said, let's take our second break. We'll come back on the other side and get into some of the games that stood out for this weekend for each one of these gentlemen. We'll be right back after this break.
Choice Hotels is a family of brands that helps you get the most for your money so you can be any traveler you want to be. You could be a free hot breakfast hero at a comfort hotel. Yes! That's how you waffle!
Mr. This script got a plot twist at a Radisson hotel.
A business big leaguer. Go for key. Even the ultimate pool float inflator. With 22 brands and the best value for your money, Choice Hotels has a stay for any you. Book direct at choicehotels.com, where travels come true. Gotta get the corners.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
Troy, you work here? I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield, never not working.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball, So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Inside of the 5, stretching to the outside, and he to the final 25 seconds as Daniel steps up out of pressure. He's got room. Inside of the 5, stretching to the outside, and he.
Big win by the Broncos out of non-conference play as we continue that talk. Let's get into some of the matchups of the week. I'm going to start with you, Charles Bishop. What was your big game this past weekend in terms of and why?
There were a couple games that I really was paying attention to, and I mentioned Alabama State and Miles being one. But the other one that I had particular interest in was Norfolk State and Virginia State. I thought that was a good game, and I think you touched on a little bit on this past Tuesday. Sometimes these Division II teams, when it's a rivalry sort of concept, you throw that other stuff, the the imbalance in the division, you throw that out. So it was good matchups. Of course, Winston-Salem State, North Carolina A&T. I think we were all walking out of the stadium last night, looking at our phones, trying to see what was going on with that. And when I get to my car and I look and see the final score, I said, they let them off the hook. They let them off the hook because there was a lot of social media buzz in Winston State going on prior to that final drive. And I was like, wow, what's really going on here? And that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, oh my goodness, we're about to get the shocker for the night. But it was not to be had. But I tell you what, those were the games that really kept my interest last night because wasn't much going on in Houston with Texas Southern Rice. I have selective amnesia on that one.
Rightfully so. And speak of that matchup, to give a little more shine for those that may not have checked the social media, see the buzz as you were coming out the stadium looking at it. Winston-Salem State had went up in that game, and they were up by 3. A&T had the ball, traveled down the field, and as the field goal kicker, I believe, missed the previous 2 40-yard. They nailed a 40-yarder, plus yarder to get it into overtime. In overtime, A&T had the ball first. They scored, kicks the extra point. Winston-Salem State gets inside the 5-yard line and has to go for it on 4th down to seek to try to tie the game. A wide receiver does come open, and unfortunately for those Rams, the quarterback missed the guy who was essentially wide open and missed him by a couple of feet and couldn't get the ball to him. And so A&T gets off the hook literally in terms of winning the game. It's interesting to see where the Aggies are in terms of their ledge, as you like to talk about, Charles. A team that was winning back-to-back multiple Celebration Bowls now is in the midst of not just dealing with the Colonial, now the Coastal Athletic Association, the CIAA, was struggling against their rival, Winston-Salem State. And Steve Gaither did a great job in terms of folks not really focusing and understand that Satan has actually had the better record over the last 4 or 5 contests, even though it's over about a 10-year period in terms of what that looks like. And they almost added another chapter to it, to that case. With that, I'm going to go to you, AD Drew. What was the game that stood out in your mind this weekend or two that keeps you saying,
I've really got 2, but you're going to limit me to 1. And it's really a toss-up, Dr. Cavil. While a lot of people saw the Shaw come back against Albany State in a back-and-forth contest, I want to really touch on this Big Cat Classic. The Big Cat Classic, for those who do not know, is Florida Memorial and Edward Waters. Florida Memorial is 3-1 in this classic. And I believe that's 3 consecutive to get to that 3-1 level. I've got to go back and double check that, but don't quote me on that. But Florida Memorial, doing their best impression of Virginia Union, rushed the ball for 46 times for 310 yards on the ground, controlling the clock a whopping 36 minutes. If you are a lower level team, that is the formula for how you beat a team from an upper level. Pretty clean, 7 for 70 on the penalties. Edward Waters also played a clean game, 5 for 46. Edward Waters did throw 1 interception. Florida Memorial had no turnovers, and that's the other key. Do not turn the ball over. Rush the ball, control the clock. Do not turn the ball over. Don't commit a whole bunch of penalties. If you're at the lower level, you have a chance. And that's why Florida Memorial, once again, is set up to be one of those quiet teams, like Langston used to be back in the day, that you don't talk about on the lower level, but that'll be there in the end.
Drew, you're absolutely correct. That is 3 in a row going back to 2022 when Florida Memorial eked out a victory 39-34. In this particular game was fascinating because it was a 3-point game. They had dominated the contest, but as happens in these rivalry games, Edward Waters comes storming back somehow and gets the game to 24-21. Florida Memorial drives down the throat. would refuse to get off the field. Edward Waters had a couple of third down chances, could not stop them. And they literally ran the ball, got to the point where they got inside the 5 and rushed into the end zone for the sealing touchdown, refusing to give the ball back, essentially taking all the time off the clock. So great analysis in terms of that. Saw a little bit of the highlight, and you're absolutely right. Fascinating when you talk about what Florida Memorial is able to do, changing a presidency in the mix of some of that. So interesting. New athletic director as well. So fascinating to see the way that Florida Memorial is able to get that done, particularly with everything that Edward Waters has done to try to seek to distance themselves in the state, as well as firmly put themselves in a position for the SIAC in multiple sports, including football. Mike, for you, same question. What stood out? What game had your interest this week?
Well, since you only let us choose one, Doc, I'm going to pick the one that I had picked, or one of the ones I had picked. There were a lot of exciting games, but I'll go with the one that stood out to me besides the Shaw game was the Bulldogs going against the Citadel. That could have gone either way, and I call that a bounce back, make a statement game. We saw South Carolina State play FAM, and most folks thought that South Carolina State kind of gave that game away, should have won. And here they bounce back. If you look at their ratio of run to pass, week 1 versus week 2, they seem to have gotten back to the run. 26 pass attempts versus 45 run attempts. They ran the ball consistently. Eric Phoenix played exceptionally well, or pretty much well. DeAndre Duhart is really solidifying himself as a running back. But I say that not because of the win. I say that is because, to me, South Carolina State is putting their stamp and say, we're saying early that we are a 10 to contend with in the MEAC. So to me, for that reason, that game, along with a few others, stood out more for me.
Interesting in that matchup when you talk about it. Eric Phoenix was 18 of 23, 194 yards and a passing touchdown. He rushed for 41 yards, so he had over 200 total yards in that matchup. So it looks like they're getting the quarterback play, and you see him maturing and maturating. They did get some big plays from the wide receiver, Justin Smith-Brown, who had 5 receptions, 94 yards. It was Caden Hyde that got in the end zone. But to your point, in terms of rushing, they rushed for 217 yards in that matchup. And so you see that the Bulldogs may be back. So it's interesting to see what that looked like when you talked about that matchup, so I can see where you're going. They put up over 400 yards and held Citadel to 275. A couple turnovers may have made it closer than it should have been in terms of how they seem to dominate in a lot of ways that matchup. But credit for the Bulldogs of South Carolina State getting it done in an in-state matchup against Citadel, the Bulldogs there. So as you allude to that, I am going to sneak one more in there for each of you all. Let's move through this. What was the worst loss for a team yesterday in your mind, Mike?
Oh, my God. You really want to know?
You only going to limit this one to one? This is the one you only give us one on?
You going to limit that to one, too?
Yeah, that's why y'all professionals.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. I got to go with that Texas Southern Rice. My goodness. They put up 70. It's 69, but you might as well 70. I think they were calling people from the stands to play wide receiver. So that to me stands out as a word. That was a drubbing. Seriously. I know Charles, my boy CB, was calling the game. I know you're probably in there eating, French's chicken and taking shots of Jack probably by the second quarter. But that to me was the worst.
AD Drew, I'm gonna let Charles stew on that a little bit so he can keep his job. Drew, what was the worst one for you?
See, I hate that you asked me this question because I always try to bring the D2 NAIA perspective to the show.
Right, you do.
But obviously I have to throw out the check games because it really should be one of those check games that the SIAC played against the SWAC. I really should pull from one of those. Or maybe I should pick that the Arkansas Baptist SWAC, even though that was atrocious. You know, UAPB did Arkansas Baptist what Arkansas did to them the week before. But that's not the one I'm going to choose. I'm actually going to go to the upper level. I'm going to go to the FCS. I'm going to the BAC. North Carolina Central Eli.
Yep.
In-state rival. You guys recruit against each other. You have players on both teams who play Pop Warner ball together, high school ball together. You're at home. You're coming off of the high of defeating Alabama State in Miami Gardens, and you lay an egg in your home opener.
Yeah,
that has to be the most disappointed loss to me in week 2.
Yeah, especially the fact that they were dominated 41-19, and it never was close from kickoff to start.
Yeah,
the Phoenix took it to them, and you were always looking for Central, the Eagles, to like turn it on, at least make it a game. They never did. So I have to agree with you. Watch that one as well, and got to the point where I turned it because I just was frustrated to see them getting beat up like that. Charles,
at least you were able to watch it, Doc. You know, I'm trying not to figure this DirecTV thing out, man. Anyway,
I know that's the source part. No, you deserve to be able to say that, Charles.
Well, he stole my thunder because that was the one that I was taking a look at with regards to home opener, number 1 team, HBCU football. Walker Harris, 3 interceptions in that game. That was a tough one to see because that was one that I actually thought North Carolina Central would not have an issue with. I know Elon's a decent team, but we've seen them with these out of conference games, no issues whatsoever. So that was surprising. I will say my honorable mention, at least, would be Towson and Morgan State, and it's because of Morgan State's inability to score some points.
Yeah.
And what would we be, Dr. Cavil, with week 2 without a little quarterback controversy? I'm looking at you, Ben Rouge. That's kind of interesting.
And I want to say this, Charles, now that you want to call out Southern, with rightfully so. I told you in the preseason, you all, and let me talk out Wilton too. You all told me Southern is this, Southern is that. I said, man, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing down there, there's a little more problems than what people think. And now, officially, you're right. Noah Biden was taken out of the game because he was so ineffective. And they ended up putting up some points, so it's going to be interesting to see moving forward.
But is it Southern without? Is it really Southern without a quarterback controversy?
At least for the past few years.
At least for almost a decade. Is it Southern football without a quarterback controversy?
That's been the story for the last 3 years. Quarterback controversy.
Yeah, over the last couple of coaches since Dawson Odom has taken his controversy quarterbacks to Norfolk State. He got the win yesterday. So I'm going to let him do his thing. And now we'll see what they're saying in Southern Baton Rouge regarding that. With that, let's take our last break and come back on the other side. We'll ask these gentlemen what matchups to watch next week. What do we get prepared for? What direction are they going? What's on their mind in terms of key matchups to keep your eyes on next week and why? Stick with us after this last break.
The Tuskegee Golden Tigers and the Grambling State Tigers will get together on the gridiron for the first time in 75 years this Saturday, September 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The last time these two institutions met, Cleve Abbott and Eddie G. Robinson led their respective programs. At that point in time, Abbott was approaching 200 victories in his career. Robinson had fewer than 100 of his wins. At the time of the matchup in 1949, Abbott had won 6 Black College National Championships, while Robinson was yet to win any of his 9 Black College National Championships. Former Mayor of Grambling, Louisiana, the Honorable Edward Jones, weighs in on the subject
City
matter.
and the university are interwoven, and whatever contribution that Eddie G. Robinson made to the university he also made to the city, because we are 1G. And so if it were not for Eddie Robinson, the world would not know about the city of Grambling or Grambling State University. So he means everything to us. In fact, we have the Eddie Robinson Museum, and I'm going to ask everyone when they come to Grambling to stop at the museum.
Cleve Abbott was born in Yanktown, South Dakota in 1894. In 1923, Abbott accepted a position as athletic director, professor, and coach at Tuskegee Institute. Abbott was the 8th head coach for the Golden Tigers, a position he held for 32 seasons. When the North Louisiana Farmers Relief Association inquired with Booker T. Washington as to someone who could lead the founding of an industrial school similar to Tuskegee Institute, Washington recommended Charles P. Adams.
If it were not for Booker T. Washington sending Charles P. Adams in 1901 to start the Negro Colored Industrial Institute, there would not be a Grambling State University. So that is absolutely correct. So we are joined together at the hip. As Mayor Johnny Ford would say, we are together.
Since 1940, the two institutions have only been on the gridiron 3 times, with Tuskegee owning the all-time series lead 2-1. In 1946, Tuskegee won 21-6. In 1947, Tuskegee was victorious 19-6. In 1949, Grambling defeated Tuskegee 55-0.
I think it's fantastic. I wish we were in the coming years to do it every year. I think that's so very important to keep the connection between Grambling State University and Tuskegee University.
Both teams entered the contest 0-1 in the 2024 season. Mickey Joseph will lead Grambling into the contest, while Aaron James will guide Tuskegee. Be sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Reporting for the Black College Sports Network, this is AD.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Thank you, Drew, for your HBCU history moment. I like that. Charles, you got next up between Southern and Jackson. Can you give us a history moment?
Yeah, plenty. I'll bring more to the fray on Tuesday. You just caught me off guard with a quick quiz.
That's what I want a video and everything. You need to work. I don't want you just talking about it. I know you can talk about it. I want you to decide your little montage, and then Mike, you're on assignment. You better get your stuff out. I got some programs from 1964. If that might help you, Mike, in regards to Prairie View and the championship season they had that year, which obviously is an anniversary year. So I got some stuff to help you do that. Job well done, Drew. I really like that. Let's get into this last segment so we can let
that was nice. That was nice, AD. I had seen that already. That was nice.
Good
nice
job,
work.
AD.
Yeah, it's available on our YouTube channel for those who want to share it with their friends. I had to work on it and do a lot of digging to pull that history up.
Yeah, it was good history. A lot of people learn some stuff with that, which is always it's fascinating. Sticking with you, Drew, what is the big matchup that you're looking at this weekend and why?
Give me a second to pull up my schedule. Dr. Cavil, normally you start with Charles or Mike with this stuff.
Well, let me go to Mike. It's at the bottom of your analysis. I got in there a couple of games, so you can check it out. Go ahead.
Are you talking about you back on me?
Who you want to go?
I'm gonna go with Drew.
Okay.
All right. I want to start off with a non-conference matchup, first of all. How about Fayetteville State traveling to Valdosta State this weekend? Once again, a great regional rival. We've seen what the CIAA has done against SIAC competition and against non-HBCU competition. But this CIAA Gulf South crossover matchup between, let's be real, two of the top teams in their respective conferences. Say what you want to about Fayetteville State not being able to win the big game, over the years, but they are always there. They are always in contention. Valdosta State, well, if you know anything about Division II football, the name Valdosta State should be very, very familiar to you. Are we limited to one, or do I give another one?
You can give another one. I like that one before you go to the next one. I like that Fayetteville State. They made the playoffs a couple of years ago in terms of out of the CIAA. And so you're right, Valdosta State cranking it up. HBCU head coach there out of Texas Southern University alum. So I'm fascinating about that matchup as they had a big win, both teams yesterday. What's your second matchup?
This one is more for the name value than the actual play that's going to be on the field. But Howard and Morehouse at MetLife Stadium in New York City. I mean, two of the bigger name brands in HBCUs, period. They're not HBCU football names, but they are the two of the bigger names in HBCU football. I mean, HBCUs. Once you throw a Tuskegee in there, Jackson State, or Florida A&M, you can rank them however you want to in the top 5 of name recognition. But those are two schools that are up in there. So that's a second one that I want to. And just quickly, a third one, Norfolk State and Hampton. The tide with battling the Tidewater.
I like
gotta go through that one, in which two coaches are arguably one interim coach fighting to become the full-time coach, one full-time coach fighting to maintain his job.
And you talking about both of these coaches getting off the duff after a tough start, some tough losses, getting big wins, particularly in matchups against rivals at the lower division level. So not much when you get the win. People are excited, obviously. But if you lose, man, the world is on fire. And you talking about being on Charles' ledge, those kind of games need people to take one foot off, if not jump. So kudos to both coaches. So you're fascinating. I like the way you pick all of those games. Were interesting. Mike, 2 or 3 from you this weekend.
I got 2. Obviously the barn burner, because your boys down in Baton Rouge, they gotta play their rival. So regardless of how they played, the question is who's gonna show up. So and when I'm talking about Southern versus Jackson State. Charles, I'll let you talk to that one. But if you look at all the other games that that kind of really step out to me, that one is one. Plus the Pine Bluff versus Tennessee State, 2 teams, 1-1. I'm interested to see how Pine Bluff shows up when they go to Tennessee. So those 2 games kind of stand out to me the most. The other one I think AD mentioned. I know you only gave us 1 or 2, but that one, because it's in New York, it's got a notoriety. I was interested in that one as well. So Howard game. So those 3 really stand out to me. We got a lot of out of conference. I'm damn sure not interested in Prairie View going to Michigan State. So
I'm glad I didn't ask that question because you told it. Charles, as Mike was so frustrated with the Prairie View going to Michigan State, he didn't hear me when I said you could get 2 or 3. He's like, no, since you eliminated 1 and 2. I said, don't be mad at you, mad at me. Prairie View got to go to Michigan State next week and you're not happy about it. Charles, where are you going with your 2 or 3 games?
Well, I'll start with one for the day party purposes. I think Howard and Morehouse will be phenomenal up there in New York. There's going to be some electric day parties up that way. But the game, the game itself, but everything blacks out for me when it's Jackson State and Southern. Somebody had to remind me about the Magic City Classic and Jackson State Southern being on that same weekend. And I was like, wow, tell me something about the Magic City Classic. That's what I mean when I say Jackson State and Southern. They sort of suck up all the oxygen in the room from a Jackson State fan base perspective. So it's going to be fun next week. You're looking at 30,000+ people in the stands with regards to both fan bases being kind of mirror images of each other, bands going after each other. This early iteration of the boom box. Shout out to Gerard Howard for coining that phrase. It is not a classic. It is just a good old fashioned rivalry.
Yep.
Good one. I like all the ones that you picked. When you talk about Morehouse Howard, Valdosta State, traveling, hosting Fayetteville State, I should say. The Southern Jackson State, which is not a classic, but just a good old-fashioned rival bucket list game, particularly when it's in Jackson, just because of the size of the stadium and it's split half and half. Fascinating matchup. Scheduled right now to be in town for that game, so I'm fascinated to see what it looks like and catch it with my eyes. The Hampton, Norfolk State, Virginia, Battle of the Bay, as you talked about, I think is another good one. So good things that you broke all those games down. I'm in agreement. One that's in my radar that I'm interested in, since both teams are off the radar, other than what we did preseason poll rankings, having Clark Atlanta in terms of top 17 in terms of the Rat Poison. They take on and travel to Florida Memorial matchup. So I'm interested to see, after Clark Atlanta at home got a win, took a last second. I'm interested to see what that looks like in terms of that matchup, particularly after Florida Memorial got it done against Edward Waters last weekend. Yes, Drew?
When is the last time you saw an NAIA or a lower level team host two teams from an upper level 2 consecutive weeks?
It's been, I'm not sure when the last time doing. First of all, you're only talking about pretty much Langston is one of the programs. Florida Memorial, when they started their program, they didn't do it early on. And so, yeah, you're probably off the map. It may be the first time ever, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, even if you think about our Division IIs hosting the FCSs, when do you see it host twice in the same season? Especially back-to-back weeks.
Rarely these days, particularly with the FCS being able to play money to the Division II. So it's essentially, from an HBCU perspective, the money games. And after this 0-8, it'll be interesting to see that you see a lot more SIAC playing these games. You see that the CIAA with the playoffs on the line. You know, some opponents at the Division II level are not happy about these matchups. So I'm intrigued to see what that looks like. And they say if they're going to play it, they think the payout should be more, because I think it's going from anywhere from $30,000 to maybe $50,000, average about 40 in terms of the payout for these matchups. So interesting to see what that looks like. Wanted to make sure we threw that in there. We'll leave it right there and parked it, and we'll catch up with you on Tuesday. But check us out. We may have another version of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on Monday with a new group coming in. Obviously on Wednesday, make sure you check out our independents, as we have Dave getting it in there as we continue to push forward. And throughout the season, we'll have something on Friday as well, as we continue to do our Tuesday and Thursday and Sunday. Wanted to shout out Drew in regards to this. I won't unpack this, but the wrapper is off of the gift box. But so you're looking in it, and keep listening, because they'll be surprised. But AD Drew has not looked in the box yet, so we won't put it out. With that, I did want to say congratulations to what seems to be on the horizon. With that being said, I know you wanted to get one other thing in there, Drew.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you tune in to tonight's BCSN Sports Wrap at 6 o'clock Eastern Time with myself and Brian, as I'll unveil a little bit more about what Dr. Cavil is speaking of. So I'll just leave it right there. You got to tune in tonight, though, in order to understand. But there's going to be some type of announcement.
Man, I may have a heart attack. Tell me now, man. I may go outside and quit. I want to know now.
Backstage, I'll tell you in the embargo room.
This is what you call television marketing, man. Stick on the hook. Call him off the air, Mike, if you want to know.
Hey, he got some stupid stuff going on. Like, what the hell going on?
Yeah, exactly. With that being said, we're going to say thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop, and AD Drew. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock and Sundays at 9 a.m. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the news in the lab. We look forward to seeing you next week. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. That's DrKenyatta Cavil Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Get off the ledge. Get off the ledge. Charles says get off the ledge. It's just week 2. But you might take a step closer. It's getting time for that. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Southern, it goes down in Jackson, boy. Yeah, it will be interesting to see if they can get it done based on some of the concerns we're hearing.
Catfish will be flying. We'll be frying.
We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Mike?
Lecture.
80?
Dismissed, everybody.